Hey guys, welcome to the Physioplata podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Patrick Damroth. I left Dr. Rod in Houston, so I stole the podcast. And I'm here in Louisville. Got a special guest for you guys. We've got Chewy from Chewjitsu.
Hey, what's up, guys?
Welcome, Chewy. Thanks for coming to talk to me again.
Good to see you again, man.
Good to see you too, man. It's nice to be back.
Your third year, yeah. It's great.
Yeah. You know, it's actually a funny thing. I was just going to tell you. Last time we were filming, I was trying to stay above water at your gym, and it wasn't going so well. Just like skill wise, like jiu-jitsu wise, like my game wise. I was, when the moves you were showing, I was trying to stick to the moves and try to understand the moves, and that was my goal, and that's kind of like what my capacity was.
Okay.
And then this time you show a move that kind of leads to butterfly guard, and then it's kind of like playing around in that position, and then I'll find X guard, and then I'll find single leg X, or do the sweep from butterfly guard, or the shin guard stuff that you were showing. That's cool. So I was able to like play around with that. It felt really cool. So it's kind of like, I feel like from last year compared to this year, I was able to expand my knowledge a lot, and learn and progress a lot in my game. But before I came here, I didn't necessarily feel that way. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just train a lot at your gym, and there's a lot of tough guys, a lot of really good guys, and you don't seem like you're progressing really well. But when you're like not training somewhere for a while, and you're coming back to that place, and it's just different looks. And then you just notice that, hey, you know what? I did actually get better.
Well, and what year did you start training?
Because I started in 2018.
2018. So so the first year you came, it was like you've been training for
like almost 2.5 years.
Yeah, because you were like a pretty new blue belt, weren't you?
The first time I came, I came right before I was promoted to blue belt.
Okay, so you're white belt back then.
Yeah.
And then next year you came as a blue belt. Okay, I gotcha.
Yeah.
And then now you're purple, right?
No, still blue.
Still blue. Okay.
Blue for life. Dude, yeah, I got these. I didn't know I didn't know the nogi rule. I mean, like if you buy something, the color represents the belt that you're supposed to have.
Maybe, but who cares? I mean, like it does when you go to. That just started once, like they started the ranked rash guards and stuff.
Yeah,
because before that, you just bought whatever color you liked.
That's what I thought. And
so yeah, I mean, in the gym it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I just thought, I thought you were blue, but then I was like, well, maybe he's a purple.
This is my favorite color. I'm like,
so if nothing else, it's it'll help you stay motivated, right? You're working for that next belt.
Just visualizing it.
That's right. Well, when my coach actually came up to me at one point, and back when I was a blue belt, he told me that he was thinking about promoting me to purple, right? He was like, hey, so you need to work hard, He wanted me to like work on my submissions. Like, okay. And so I used to wear a purple like sweatband on my ankle.
Nice.
So that so every day I would step on the mat, I would look down and say, okay, I need to work on submissions today. It was just kind of like that little reminder to like work on what I was supposed to do. So
yeah,
maybe your shorts could be that for you.
Well, it's funny that you say that, and sometimes I do feel that way because I got sometimes I wear a purple shirt, purple like deck out in purple.
Yeah.
But the mental focus or the presence of mind to remind yourself what you're focusing on. I found over the last few months I've done that more, and it's helped me get better.
Yeah. Well, it's helpful for anything you get into. Like, what are you training for? Why are you here? What are you trying to get out of this? I mean, from everything from, your normal day-to-day jiu-jitsu training to when you hit the weight room or whatever. I mean, it's good to know why you're doing certain things and having a focus, because, otherwise it's like a lot of people will complain they don't know if they're making progress or whatever, right? A lot of times it's like, well, what are you training for? And a lot of times they don't have a good answer. And so like, well, of course you don't. You don't know if you're getting better because you're not actually working towards anything in particular. But if you give yourself something specific to work on, then you kind of quickly figure out, am I making progress towards that? Like, for instance, if I'm chasing an arm lock, a very particular arm lock, well, then I know that I'm getting better at that because I'm hitting more of those arm locks, or I'm not, right?
Right.
That kind of thing.
And then recently you've done, I was a little off topic, just a little tangent, but you've done your own competition. And I just meant to ask you what your rule set was, just because I was competing at IBJJF just a few weeks ago, and it's quite different.
Yeah.
As far as I know. It went well. It's the first one I did for that particular, federation.
Yep.
And I just wanted to win the first match just because, like you said before, if you lose the first one, you're out, and you're not only, wasting your entry money. You wasted a trip and time, and
Yeah.
I mean, not wasted because you still learn something. But you know what I mean.
But nobody likes to go home losing their first match. Granted, half the people in the room do.
Yeah.
Right. Half the people that show up to those tournaments, half of them are losers. Right. Out of the first match, and again, losers is not necessarily. It's not a derogatory term. You lost. It's no big deal. Right. Like we always like with society today, we have to like make everything flowery. Right. It's like, no, you lost. It's just get over it. You're a loser today. We've all been there. Right. I've been there plenty of times. So you learn from it, and it can light a fire under your butt. But yeah, it sucks. You go home, you spend all that time doing it, and then you're like, damn, right? So the rule set that we did was basically the format of the tournament was it's Madison bracketing, which is basically you take all of the people in a particular skill level, whatever. So let's say white belts, adults, and you just work from the lowest or highest, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a division. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a division. And then we did round robin, where they basically got they would go against each person in the division. So like this way everybody got matches. So no matter if you won or lost, you win against each person in the division, and you would get points every time you had a match, whether you won by submission or won by a ref's decision, or if you got DQ'd. Right? If you got DQ'd, you would lose a point, and they would gain a point. And then if you won by points, then you would win, or won by a ref's decision, get 1 point. Submissions were 2 points. And that was to incentivize that. And then the actual rule set of the tournament, I mean, was pretty liberal with all the submissions. I mean, we let white belts ankle lock, blue belts and stuff could do knee bars and everything else. So pretty standard stuff. And then the way that they would rule out, or the ref's decision would be made, was based on technical aggression, meaning they're going for techniques, like not spazzing out, going nuts, but actually like clearly going for a technique of some sort, right? Whether that's a guard, pass, sweep, whatever. Positional control, right? So dominating positions, and then submission attempts, legitimate submission attempts where that person had to like twist out of it, and you could tell someone was actually fighting versus like the guy throws up a sloppy triangle, like get out of here, right? And so that's what they would be judged on. I mean, in the tournament went great. We had a lot of competitors. We had to close off registration way early because we got too many. And then what was interesting was like we were going to be strict on stalling. Like, I don't want you to stall. Like, go after it, because we kept the matches short. Right? Because to me, it's like, why make the matches long? They don't need to be long. Jiu-jitsu is one of the only sports where that happens, right? You go from like white belts, and then all of a sudden, by the time you're talking about black belt divisions or ADCCs, they want to like make the division or the matches like double to 4 times as long. Like, no other sport does that. And it's like, it doesn't make any sense because it just creates boring matches. Whereas like you say, hey, do all the same stuff. I think of wrestling. Like go to Olympic like wrestling, they don't take the wrestling time that you had in high school and double it or triple. They say go faster, right? Like go faster, go harder, go after it. And so we kept that in. I think it made for good matches. We didn't have any stalling and lots of submissions. It was a lot of fun.
How'd you do your weight classes?
There were none. You weighed in wherever you weighed in, and basically you would just be lumped into a big thing. So we would have all the competitors lined up in a document where, or in the system, by their weight. So it would be, let's say, again, going back to white belts, white belt adults. That would be one giant division. And we would have them listed from lowest to heaviest, right? And then all you do is you'd start at one end of the bracket, and you would just count them up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so, every now and then you would have some big weight differences. Like there was one guy that was, with some of the guys that were like 210 pounds, and he was like close to 300. That was one mismatch. But most of the time it was like pretty, within 5 to 10 pounds, everybody was there.
Yeah.
And that was just to get rid of the issue where it happens a lot of times when you go to a regular tournament with weight classes where you'll have, a ton of people here and then no people here.
Yeah.
And again, for this tournament did not carry prestige, right? It's not the IBJJF, it's not the ADCC. What it is a place where people can come and cut their teeth and get experience and gain some knowledge about how their game works and test themselves. That's what it was about. And so I was like, well, then I'm going to set up the situation where you can get a lot of chances to do all of that stuff, opposed to like, we're going to burn through this tournament really quickly, I'm going to take your money, then we're going to be done. It's like, I want you guys to come in and have a chance to just go after it, not be afraid of losing, and just let your games go. and that's what I wanted to see. And, I didn't want people to be ridden out on points, like guy gets a takedown, just sits there, because again, if the guy did get the takedown, but then the other person was attacking with submissions, we're giving it to the guy on the bottom. And I wanted people to not be afraid to like pull the trigger, because I even think that helps a little bit when you go over to a regular tournament where we can talk about things like, hey, it doesn't matter if you win or lose, just go, right? We can talk about that stuff, but to have a visceral experience with it is completely different. You don't really know it. Like, you can write the quote down and you can pair it around verbally, but until you've had a visceral experience with it, I don't think you quite understand it. And so being in a situation where there really are very few deterrents to just opening up your game and just going for broke, it allows you to then see what does your game actually look like when you're not worried about this guy hugging on to a point, or what does your game look like when you are not worried about losing because you have another match lined up. A lot of times you start to unlock a different level in your game and experience a different skill level that you didn't know existed, because sometimes you play kind of scared or nervous, right? And so I wanted to help competitors sort of realize that.
That's actually interesting. I should say that I was definitely not playing my usual jiu-jitsu game during my competition, because I was just going. I was just anxious about losing points and losing the match because I lost by 1 or 2 points or whatever.
Yeah.
So when I did get into a pinning situation, that's all I was focused on. So the whole my first match was all based up on me just pinning and getting my points. And then within the last 10 seconds or so, I was trying to go for an arm attack. So that's how that one was, and it was nothing like how it usually roll.
Yeah.
It was nothing like it. So, and I felt like I left a lot of transitions on the table that I could have easily taken advantage of in practice and done. And it was, I guess, like you said, it's just trying to get points versus using jiu-jitsu. There's a difference between the two.
There is, and it's super common. I used to do the same thing. And again, it takes time to really unlock that other side of your game where you can just go. The interesting thing that I found, though, is, again, as long as you understand how to play the points to some level, when you let your game go and you stop worrying about it too much, you become one of those people that becomes better in competition than worse. Like most people, when they compete early on, they're worse in competition than they are in the gym, because they're holding back, they're not going for it. They don't really show their whole game. But when they get to a point where they say, you know what, I don't care, and whatever, everybody has this experience at some point, it's then they go for it. And then all of a sudden, it's there's this person who is better in competition than they are in the gym, because they've got adrenaline pumping, they've got this focus, they have this, they don't necessarily care for the person that they're, because even when we're rolling, sometimes we're really trying to take care of each other. They don't care about that person, they're just going to go after them. And a lot of times, at least for me, it's been this way, and a lot of people that I've known, all of a sudden, it this switch flips, and all of a sudden this person becomes way better in competition, and it's mostly a mindset thing that was hindering them. So
that's cool. Are you making another tournament?
Yes. So we've got some stuff in the works. I can't really talk too much about it. That one was our little tester. And because the tester went so well, we may be partnering up with a company to help me, and the people that helped me run the tournament was my black belt student Jeff and his wife Erica, and all the students and everything else. But Jeff and Erica were kind of the people really doing the day-to-day operation of it. And so there's a company that we may be partnering with that'll help us basically do with all the logistics, so that we can do them across the country.
That's cool.
Maybe do between 4 to 8 next year. We'll see. We'll see though.
Yeah, let me know when you put one in Houston.
Well, and again, we'll do it with that same style where it'll be, that's what it's going to be about, is come get experience. Again, you're not, no one's, it's for you, right? It's not necessarily everybody's going to care about this medal, but you're going to get a ton of experience, so that when you go to one of the big competitions, the whole thing is just easier for you. You'll hopefully have some breakthroughs, both with your skill level, but also mindset wise,
Cool. Well, I was going to talk to you about a different topic, so we were just going off on a little tangent. But,
of course. It's a podcast, right? If people don't expect, if they don't like tangents, it's probably the wrong thing.
Not the right thing. So what I was going to talk to you about mainly was just your perspective and your strategies as a coach and as an athlete yourself, who's competed, who had to go through some injuries. So I was going to ask you about your thoughts on what you do when you get injured, and how do you progress your training to when you first return to training, and then when you first return to a competition.
So basically you're asking, if I'm coming back to, I'm injured, I'm coming back to training, what am I doing?
Yeah.
So, first off, when you get injured, the worst part is that a lot of times it can mess with mentally, like a lot of depression and whatever. So the first thing you have to do is ask yourself what you can do. Because a lot of times the thing that we want to do gets taken away from us, right? We can't roll hard, or we can't, lift super heavy or whatever. So you got to sort of backtrack and say, well, what can I do? And that's an important thing, because again, it's very easy when you're not, I've seen it happen so many times where someone gets injured and they go through this downward spiral. They start eating poorly. They start, not doing all the things, and they just go down into a hole. And the problem with that is then when they come back to training, they're out of shape, they're overweight, they've been eating poorly, and now they're in this worse place now. Whereas if they would have kept themselves together physically, when they came back to training, it would be a much smoother return, right? So that's an important thing. And I think that a lot of people in jiu-jitsu who, not everybody, but a lot of them aren't natural athletes. They don't, like, a lot of them don't do other sports. They're not athletes. They're not like, oh, let me go like lift weights and do all this stuff. It's all like jiu-jitsu becomes this anchor for them, right? This cornerstone thing. Everything else revolves around it. They run because of jiu-jitsu. They lift weights because of jiu-jitsu. They diet because of jiu-jitsu. When jiu-jitsu leaves, it all crumbles, right? So that's important especially for jiu-jitsu athletes, but anybody that has an athletic activity that they're really into. Coming back, it goes back to that same idea. What can I do? When you come back, you don't want to go full speed. Right? We'll use jiu-jitsu as an example. You don't want to, like, if you come back from some injury that required you to be off for some time, let's say it was a knee injury and a shoulder injury or whatever, you don't want to come back full speed, because if you do, you're probably going to injure it, because a lot of times there's a disconnect between our body and our mind, right? Again, they're the same thing essentially, but we interpret sensations with them a little differently. So with our body will start changing on us, and our mind has not caught up to that yet. So when we train, we get the feedback on where our body is. One of the reasons why a lot of times it's easier to eat well when you're involved in an activity is because you feel the feelings of what happens if I don't. We get good feedback from that, right? And so we're like, I don't want to eat poorly before I train, because every time I eat like a big cheesy, greasy meal before I train, I feel like crap. So I'm going to eat really well. And then if I have a bad meal, it'll be after training, because we have that feedback. And a lot of times athletes, where they've had a prolonged period of time off, when they come back, they still feel like the same person mentally, right? You're the same person. You probably maybe even feel better. You're like, I'm smarter, I've got more experience, whatever, but you feel like the same person. But when you come back, you have that feedback quickly that you are not that same person. And I found where people will try to come back and they try to go back to the same pace that they were at before, and their body's not there, and they either run into either just wear themselves out really quickly, or they injure themselves because they might be doing a particular movement that requires them to cut an angle very fast, and their body doesn't have that timing, and the receptors in their body aren't tuned into it again, and so they're off. Their mind is like, do this, and their body's trying to do it fast enough but not quite, and they end up getting injured again. And so a lot of times coming back to it is like, okay, let's start off with, if it's jiu-jitsu, for instance, we're going to drill. We're just going to go through drilling. We're going to get your body acclimated to these movements again and all the feelings of it. Depending on the severity of the injury, we may roll a little bit, but it's going to be under situational and lighter conditions, right? We're going to be very light about it. So for instance, I came back from a nose break some years ago where my nose actually had to be surgically repaired. I rolled very quickly once I was given the okay from the doctor, but my nose was still healing, so I chose my partners very carefully. As when I came back from a meniscus tear, I didn't start rolling immediately. I came back to drilling and just started letting my body get used to the movements with my knee being on the ground, my feet posting and cutting angles with it. Because you're twisting around in certain positions, which puts pressure on the meniscus. And so I wanted to get a feeling for that first before I started going back into it. With the meniscus, I did it the last time I had my meniscus injury. I went back over the course of about 12 weeks. So I made a plan for myself, because my default is to just want to rush back into it. And it was my left knee. My right knee, if we look at them, I never gained full extension back in my right leg. And I suspect it was because I didn't really do a lot of PT for it. I would do a little bit, and then I was just right back to training like normal. And I don't feel like I got the full degrees of my leg back. So it doesn't fully lock out. Whereas my left one's great. Got full lockout, everything came back perfectly, but I was regimented, and I was very deliberate with my PT work. And when I came back, I wrote a plan for myself. It's like, okay, this 4-week block I'm drilling, doing this one. This 4-week block I'm rolling with these people from these positions. And then on the 12th week, I was like, I'm coming back. And this will be the first week I have full rolling. And then I came back to it, and again, it was rough. cardio wise. Because I wasn't used to rolling like I used to be, you know, so, but it was a little bit easier for me to come back. And so I think that really comes back to very simply making everything gradual, like taking it back, doing whatever easy activity you can do and then working it up. I've had issues with injuries before that impeded me with lifting. So I would just get down. It might be like literally like using the bar. I'm using the bar right now. Of course, I could do more, but hey, my shoulder's jacked up. So we're doing the bar. We're going to get that blood flow. We're going to keep the movements good and then slowly working our way up, you know, and doing different things to help support the muscles and everything else. But at the same time, not doing any more damage and not being impatient and not trying to rush back into it. Because a lot of times people want to rush back into it, right? But again, that's a bad idea because you're going to start like just telling a young guy, take 2 weeks off from like hard training. They're like, oh God, this is crazy. But again, if they don't do that, that 2 weeks then becomes 4 months, 6 months, because you weren't willing to just give it time to rest, and then you came back and you got a more serious injury. So
you were touching on the subject of depression and how you changed, or how somebody would change the daily activities that they were using in their routine to help them be healthy, and kind of fall behind on all of that as they were, you know, getting back into training. Is that something that happened to you at some point?
Oh yeah. I mean, think about it. I mean, think about like any of us, especially like, I think I heard this, and again, this could apply maybe to women too, but I heard that I was listening to these guys talk in a podcast I was listening to, and one of them who's a guy who studies like men's psychology, right? And he was saying that like men have to do things. Like we're not like, we don't really talk our way through problems very well. We like to do stuff.
Yeah.
You know, and so like when we try to address men and women's psychology the same, like it doesn't work very well. Like men are better off if they feel like they have some control, they're making progress towards something. It's like, I mean, we want to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like we're getting after things, right? We're accomplishing things. That makes us feel good, right? It's like I can talk to my wife. She just wants me to listen. Right, and again, that's okay. My default is let's go fix it. Right.
Yeah.
Her default is I just want you to listen to me. Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'll just listen to her. I'll respect that. You know, but for me, it's like when there's a problem, it's like then I'm like, I need to go fix this. I need to go do something for this. Right. And so for me, like if there's been periods of time where I've had injuries where I was sidelined and man, it was depressing. I couldn't do the thing I wanted to do. I couldn't train, and fast food. I was like, well, I can go eat a cheeseburger. I mean, I'm not training later, so I'm not going to feel like crap. And then you come back and you're like 10 pounds heavier. You're like, God, I feel like crap. And then recently I had an issue where it ended up being nothing, but I had like a potential health scare, we'll say it that way. And so I the doctors really couldn't give me a good answer. So I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to take 4 weeks off from like all this hard training to give my body so I can get all these tests run and I won't risk anything. And during that period, I couldn't train really hard. So I was going on like long walks. And I was going on, I would go into the gym and I was doing a lot of like long stretches. You know, because again, flexibility is not something it's not something I have, but sitting in the gym and going in and doing like all these different stretching routines that I had got a coach to give me were very helpful, because when I came back, then I had this more limber body. And then when I came back to training, I was definitely not in shape. But at the same time, like during that off time, I also like had been reading more. I'd been getting other things done, and so no matter what, I felt like I was making progress in my life. I wasn't sitting around eating cheeseburgers and flipping through my damn phone, right? Like I went through, like I'd read several books that I'd been wanting to read that had been sitting in the queue. I went for long walks and felt pretty good in my body. Felt healthy from stretching all these different tight hips and shoulders out. And I was like, man, I feel good. So when I put my body back into the ringer, I was actually better off. So it worked out fine, So yeah, that's stuff I've definitely dealt with. I think it's something that every athlete or any person that's, even if you're like a weekend warrior style athlete, you've dealt with it at some point, or you will deal with it at some point.
Yeah. What's your go-to cheeseburger place?
So, well, it's like, it's so weird. I don't eat crappy food most of the time. So if we're here in Louisville, so I'll say if I'm down in Atlanta, they've got a place called Vortex. It's a really good cheeseburger place. It's also got a giant wooden penis in the room. It's like got a big giant wooden penis. It's just a random thing. But
is it a gentleman's club?
No, I think it's like in the gay part of town.
Okay.
So like I remember like it was funny, like we went there for a competition, and like we're there, and like I didn't even think about it. I don't care. So we're having a cheeseburger. And then I look out and like we saw the wooden penis, or wooden penis. And then I look out and then I see all the flags. I was like, oh, it's rainbow flags. And then I look over and there's these two jack dudes, like, and they're having they have a big margarita and they're splitting it with each other. I was like, oh, it's just like we're the gay part of town, whatever. Fantastic cheeseburger. So Vortex in Atlanta, and then there's here in Louisville we've got a couple good burger places. Probably the one of the favorites is it's called Muscle and Burger Bar. It's pretty good. So it's basically got all those those burgers that have all the whatever kind of thing you want on it, right? Everything from eggs and whatever to chorizo and what is it, pork belly or whatever, to a regular cheeseburger. So those are pretty good. Nice. But if I was going to eat like a fast food burger, I don't know. I haven't eaten a fast. The last time I had a fast food burger was I went to McDonald's in Costa Rica back in 2021. We were there for a wedding, and we came back from the rainforest. On this hike and things, and they were stopping at McDonald's. And I was like, well, I'll get a burger, And I hadn't had McDonald's since then, since 2011. And but we went there, and I remember getting a Big Mac. Do you know what a Big Mac tastes like in Costa Rica?
No.
It tastes like a Big Mac anywhere.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that. That's like it's consistency, So like you have a Big Mac in Costa Rica, it tastes like a Big Mac. It tastes like a Big Mac down the street. From a business standpoint, being able to consistently take your product and whatever and bring it around, that's pretty impressive. But so random tangent for your question.
Yeah. Hey, bro, McDonald's in Germany tastes a ton better than McDonald's here.
Probably because in Europe they can't probably put certain things in the food. You guys are like Europe's more strict about certain things.
Yeah.
But you guys got to pay for ketchup, don't you?
Well, we've got to pay for everything.
Yeah, so you guys got to pay. See, like in America, just give me ketchup.
Yeah.
Right, like as a kid, you can just like.
There's no refills. There's no free, ketchup, sauce, nothing.
Yeah, so that's the exchange, right? Like here you can get all the ketchup and condiments and refills you want. Over there, it's like you got to pay for that stuff. Yeah. I wonder why that is. I wonder why, like in Europe, you got to pay for it, but like over in America, you don't.
I think it's just a cultural aspect.
Okay. Yeah.
Nickel and dime you for anything in Germany.
Okay. Fair enough.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like maybe also it's like a resource thing, and I think maybe also based on the business model. They do have to pay a lot more to be a business in Germany, I would assume.
It's pretty sense. I mean, you guys have a lot, not you guys, you're American. In Germany or Europe, they generally have higher taxes in those places. So it's, fucking government.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Anyway, so one other question, getting back to more pleasant things. So one question I had still was, now as a coach, when you're having one of your athletes or students, suffer an injury or get injured, how do you get them back mentally? Like, what's your approach for that?
Like, how do you mean get them back mentally?
So I was working with a competitive black belt athlete that I was sponsoring last year. Mm-hmm. Was it this year? No, it was last year, mainly. And so there's a big mental block, basically. There's like, his injured side, his wrist. He wasn't trusting it. He wasn't using the grips that he used to for passes and stuff like that, or framing or basing out. And there's also, and even though he had the range of motion, everything was fine. Like the strength was fine, the range of motion was good. We just had to specifically go through the movements for him to be comfortable in it. And then obviously his first competition back was there were some mixed results, but the biggest victory he got from that is like he felt like he was normal again. So I was just wondering, like, how do you get your athletes back to that?
Sure. So like, you think about this, you'll go, here's an example with my nose. I trained for, at this point, when I got my nose broken, I had been training, well over a decade, right? And would been training going after it. Well, I broke my nose. I'd been shooting, wrestling, and everything else, and I shot and got my nose broken. Mm-hmm. Now, in that moment, the shooting became kind of scary for me now, right? Now, granted, I'd shot thousands of shots, right? I've gotten down and taken people down thousands of times, right? But in that one instance, one thing happens, and all of a sudden I'm nervous about it, right? And so that's the weird thing about trauma, right? We have this injury or whatever, and so you have to do, and you said it right, you have to then get them to be comfortable with it. And so, for me, what it was initially when I was ready to come back, shooting shots, drilling. Mm-hmm. I'm not rolling up. And then working with people that were controlled, that I knew how to do things, and shooting on them and wrestling with them. Till I got to the point where over time I got enough evidence to prove to myself it's fine. You know, because that's really what you're doing. You're trying to basically mount the evidence to yourself on the other side and say, this is completely fine. And, you know, you can even do this sometimes with your own, like, self-talk, because it's very easy sometimes to be negative about yourself, about whatever thing it is. You know, like, people just get down on themselves. But then if you, like, sort of like, hold on a second, right? You have enough stuff, enough evidence a lot of times to counter that, right? Like, oh, why this? I mean, you know, you can just think about that, right? And so with that, it's usually just getting people back and incrementally sort of lowering the intensity down, letting them get comfortable with those movements and those things that created the problem, and then ratcheting up the intensity ever so slightly so that they get to feel confident again in what they're doing. And then over time, it's fine, right? And like that's where drilling comes in place, and then situational rolling, and then even doing drills where you're doing like designated winners, where like one person, you'll move around in whatever situation, but there's a winner who's designated. So this person is going to be the winner. This is the person that is going to actually hit the technique. You're basically just a moving body. Yeah. So they can feel comfortable doing those things again, you know, and this is true pretty much with anything, even like getting a guy to like squat again after he hurt his knee. You know, start really light and then work up until the point where you feel like you can put more weight on it and just, you know, add 5 pounds each day, and then eventually it becomes like heavy again. You're like, okay, I did this, it's fine, you know, so.
Yeah. Like you're desensitizing the stimulus of the fear that impacts your apprehension. Yeah. And then you're slowly calming that down, basically, you're saying. Okay.
100%. I mean, and you can take that idea to just about anything. Like, hell, I had trouble sleeping last year. I was having some issue with a little bit like I don't even call it insomnia. I don't know what it was. But I remember like I had a couple of nights of really rough sleep, and I just couldn't sleep for whatever reason. And it started getting in my head. Every night I'd be like, oh man, I wonder if it's going to be a good night. I start thinking about it, and I was like, what the hell's going on? You know, and then you have to catch it. You have to catch it mentally. Okay, I'm being a nervous wreck about this thing. And so then it was like, strategies just like that were like, all right, I'm just going to go outside and lay in the hammock and put my headphones on. I'm tired. I'm not going to try to go to sleep. I'm just going to relax. No pressure. Mountain, you know, like that, you know, so like it just, you know, figuring out different ways to like get rid of that pressure, that intensity that you put onto something, and allow yourself to just be comfortable with it again, you know, and that's really what it is. And you can use that with lots of different stuff.
Nice. Have you had an athlete specifically, have you helped somebody to get back from an injury specifically into a competition?
I wouldn't say that I've done it, because usually like when the guys come into the gym, if they get injured, I send them to Eugene, you know, because Eugene's he's like our gym physical therapist, so he takes care of them. What I'll do though is I will reinforce, like if I know they're injured, then we'll change training a little bit. I'm like, hey man, like I got a young kid who he dislocated his patella the other day. It's fine, you know, it's like he just popped it back in place, and we're like, all right, so like for a little while you got to be careful, because because those tendons are going to be a little bit more loose and stuff like that. We don't want it to happen again. And so like he's like, I got to do something. He's like, I can't just not. He's like super like amped up about it, the fact that he can't train. So I was like, okay, well then we'll dial back training, and I'll give you some things that you can do when you come in that won't affect that at all, right? That won't like put any pressure where your knee's shifting. No problem. And so that's the kind of stuff that I'll do for people, is if I know that there's an issue, I'll give them some sort of adjustment that they can do that won't affect them negatively.
Nice. That's good. And do you have anything in particular that you use right now or I guess I would say, is there something that you're doing supplementally besides jiu-jitsu or outside of jiu-jitsu that helps you to stay a little bit, you know, healthier or feel a little bit better? If you had to pick one thing, is there something?
Well, I mean, basically, I don't know that there's one thing. I think they all kind of work together. I mean, sleep's a big one. Yeah. You get enough sleep, you feel way better. But stretching really helps. Like, as far as my body feeling broken and everything else, stretching out stuff really helps. And again, it's so boring. Yeah. You know what I mean? Because, I mean, like, if you literally, if I was like, I always think about this, the really important stuff that I do when I really think about it in my life, whether it's the jiu-jitsu, business, relationships, it's really boring stuff. You know what I mean? Like, you know what's really important to my wife? Like, when I just help out around the house, or when I go, like, she goes out to the barn and she's got to take care of the horse, and I go with her to help out. She just really appreciates that. That's not exciting. If I got her a gift, she wouldn't care. She's like, well, yeah, but I would have, nice gift. I would have loved to have you out there helping out with something, you know? Yeah. Or just, you know, maybe like putting up the dishes out of the dishwasher, something like that. That means a lot more to her than me getting her a damn gift,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I can be very absentee, but here's a gift. Don't care. This is exciting. This is important.
Yeah.
With training, a lot of times it's the same thing, right? We can be, winning the gold medal and all this. It's very exciting, hitting someone with a technique, very exciting. It's not exciting. Sitting down in a position, just sitting there and holding for 2 minutes, like not just for 30 seconds, but like the 2 minutes or more, right? You might do multiple sets and getting those muscles to actually create some soft tissue change so that like it's actually going to do something for later. Because you can stretch out for like 20 seconds and it feels good.
Yeah.
It's going to go right back.
Right.
You're not going to make actually any change. Opposed to like, let's sit in this stretch and we'll do 2 minutes on this side, 2 minutes on this side, and we'll do it twice. And that means like 4 minutes on this, whatever. And that stuff's not very exciting. You're just sitting there, but I think that stuff's really important. Even like the ice bath. I love the ice bath. Got one. I've got like the whole setup here at the house. And everybody loves it. I'm going to jump in the ice bath and get recovered, right? It's exciting. It's fun, right? And it only takes 2 minutes or 3 minutes or whatever. But again, I if I had to choose between the ice bath and stretch, I would stretch. It's far more useful to me because again, I feel a difference in the way that I lift. Like I can lift weights and I have less friction in my muscles, like the muscles are much smoother and down into like the squat, or my shoulders don't hurt as much, and all that stuff. So stretching really, again, like I know people poo-poo on it, and it's also not just stretching, but it's also strengthening. So like you're loosening up the muscles, and then also doing something where you're strengthening up that range of motion. And then even doing like Eugene was doing today, where you're doing movement in that range of motion. So it all kind of goes to say, I lump that together as stretching.
Right.
You can call it mobility, whatever, stretching, mobility, and strength, whatever you want to call it, that kind of stuff. That stuff's really important. Yes. And that's been helpful. And then that sort of falls in line with like lifting too, where lifting and not lifting for ego, but lifting for like good structural integrity in your joints and everything is very important. And a lot of times I don't think people do it. They lift to like get huge or get like jacked or strong, and that's okay. It's all good stuff. And it can be a byproduct of it, but I think lifting and really focusing on getting good range of motion and all that stuff is very important for longevity and for the health of your joints.
Yeah. I started hot yoga like 6 months ago, and it's made the biggest impact. I had done weightlifting before, I'd done ice baths before, you name it, I've done it, and it was good. Like you said, you get a little relief momentarily.
Yeah.
Nothing would last, but nothing has impacted like my daily activities and movements and daily feelings as much as well as hot yoga.
Are you doing like the really hot room?
Yeah.
Did you make it through the first time?
Well, so
I didn't make it through the first time. It was a 90-minute session.
What do you mean by make it through? Like stay in the room?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So I can do that.
First day, like the first time I did hot yoga, I couldn't make it through the room. The woman comes in, she's like, namaste. She's doing her little soft voice thing, and then she was like looking at me, and I've got like a tank top on, I've got MMA shorts on, and she's like, the first job for any of our beginners here is just try to stay in the room. And I remember I was like, I got this. And I'm like, I'm trying to do yoga, right? Yeah. Like I was like attacking it like I would MMA. So like when I'm doing the stretches, I'm really trying to do it. And then about 45 minutes in, I was like, hands are on the ground. It's like a faucet going. I'm like, oh fuck, like this is terrible. Like I feel awful. And like I went outside for a second, cooled off, came back in, and I just sat down for the rest of the class. I just sat there. Like I can't do anything. I'm just going to sit here because every time I start moving around, I feel like I'm just dead. Yeah. And then I lost like 5 or 6 pounds.
Oh yeah.
So it's intense. You know what I mean? So it's it's tough. That hot room is something different. So
it feels a lot better to me to do it that way than regular yoga, just to loosen up. I struggle a lot with flexibility. So having a little leg up with the heat, loosening me up a little helps to get through some of the motions. But
I like a warm room, like 95 or something, But like that whatever it is, 110 with all the brutal.
Yeah, it can get really hard.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, okay, man. That's all I had, for my questions.
Cool.
I appreciate you again taking the time to talk to me about all those topics, and I had a great time being at your camp again as well.
Thank you, buddy.
All right, guys, there you had it. We're wrapping up the episode for Physioplata, and then soon enough I'll be back in the studio with Dr. Rod. So check out the next episode, and if you like this kind of content, just go ahead and leave a like, leave a subscription. And if you have any other topics you want me to cover, and Dr. Rod as well, just put it in the comments also. Thanks, guys. Later.